So once we've got this, our master coated with clear coat, 2 coats of clear coat, get it nice and smooth and shiny, whatever you're using. Now we're going to anchor it. And the way we anchor it, all we do is go on the back side of the lure, and you got a little screw in your kit, and we're going to drill a pilot hole. And to make that pilot hole, I got this little drill bit kit at Harbor Freight. It's awesome, really cheap. And basically all it is a little tiny drill chuck, and it comes with a bunch of little tiny drill bits in the back. I don't ever even put this thing in the drill itself. I just take these things by hand and turn it back and forth, and it goes right through whatever material I need to make a pilot hole in anyways. So I'm going to put a pilot hole in there. I want to make sure that I get that pilot hole really square, because I want this lure to stand straight up and down. You know, I don't want it to angle off in any direction. So I get a nice pilot hole, get that thing anchored straight up and down so that I can put my piece of PVC around there. If it was at an angle, you know, it might come off to the side and we wouldn't get a good mold around there. We wouldn't get a nice uniform mold around there. Okay, so setting this sucker in the mold. What I try to do, we're gonna eventually, when we get this thing demolded, we're gonna cut the bottom of it. Let me show you a mold here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the bottom, and that's where we're going to be. You know, once this thing gets done poured, we're going to cut the bottom and pull the lures out of the bottom. So what I usually like to try to do is I try to leave a lot of material on the bottom, because we want that to snug together. And anyways, that's what gets flexed all the time. So I kind of don't center the lure. I kind of move it so that it's closer to the top of the lure, is closer to the PVC, and I leave myself a lot of room and a lot of nice material on the bottom where I'm going to cut that and pull those lures out. Okay, so now all I got to do is seal that PVC to that blueberry top, and so I just use a piece of clay. This is one I've used several times, and so all I'm going to do is take that piece of clay, put it around there, seal it up. Once I get that clay sealed up on there, now I'm ready to mix up my silicone mold and pour the lure. So I'm using High Strength 3, which is their most flexible. You know, we're pouring a one-piece mold here, so we want something really flexible. So this has been working great for me. If you're using something else, make sure you use something that's really flexible. Okay, and so to fill this up, we're going to need less than 2 ounces, but I mixed 2 ounces. You want to make sure you get the silicone mixed according to specs. If you get it off a little bit, it will work, but your mold won't last nearly as long. So if we get this mixed exactly the way they have us mixing it, then you could probably get 50 baits out of this one mold. If we don't, then the bait, it starts to crumble, and I've got maybe less than even 10 sometimes out of something I mixed up incorrectly. So get the ratio right. I usually mix up 2 ounces because that's kind of how they have this thing gauged. All right, so what we're trying to do, you know, is we're going to pour the silicone. Basically, we're going to fill up the cylinder till we get, let me show you here on our lip. Just before we get to that bottom of that the first hole for our pull point. We don't want to go past that, because then silicone would run through that hole and connect the 2 pieces of the mold, and it would be a pain in the butt. We don't want to go shorter than that, because we want to have a nice guide for this lip. You know, when we go back to pour this thing, we're going to want to slide this lip in there, you know, and we want that thing to hold the lip squarely. And so having about this much lip, you know, much guide on that lip is perfect, so that when we flip it over and pour it, you know, we've got that lip exactly squared and centered. We don't want that lip turning at all. So having a little, about a, you know, 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch guide for the lip is perfect. So all I'm going to do is fill up my mold until it gets just before that bottom pull point, and then that's perfect. Okay, a couple things here too. Make sure you get this sealed down well, the clay. Also, you can use a hot glue gun, but make sure you get that sealed well. You know, it's going to take 18 hours for the silicone to dry, and if you don't get it really sealed, all that silicone will slowly ooze out of your mold, create a big mess, and you won't have a mold in the end. Okay, so I'm going to mix it. Usually just use a yogurt container to do this. So I'm mixing 2 ounces of these to 1 of these. I'm going to mix that up. Okay, so I got her all mixed up now. I don't use any mold release on the lure or the PVC or anything. When I first started, I did that, which added one more mess to the stuff, and later on I just skipped it and it worked fine. So I don't use any mold release at all. I just pour the silicone straight onto the stuff. Fetch right up to the bottom of that pull point mark. That's perfect. So we're just going to let that now harden for like 18 hours, basically till tomorrow. And at that point, we'll be ready to go. This thing will pull that out of there, and we'll have just this thing ready to go, starting to make our casting our own lures then. Okay, so I've waited the next day now, and so I'm ready to get this thing out of the mold. So we'll undo the screw. Peel that baby off the plastic. Peel off the clay. Looks like I got it good and sealed there. Not a lot of silicone ran behind the clay. Okay, now it's just a question of getting this bugger out of here, and you can see we got this lip, so I'm actually going to use that to kind of pull. I'm going to push the bait back out through the bottom. It's a little tricky, but not bad. I kind of go around the top and stick my thumb in the edge there and move it around a little bit. And on the bottom, pull and wiggle a little bit. So the nice thing about this stretchy silicone is it's pretty easy to get it out of there. Just kind of pinching it and wiggling it back and forth. Okay. Alright, now I got my X-Acto knife. Trimmer on the bottom. Okay. Now I'm ready to slice down the bottom of the lure here, about 3/4 of the way, maybe not quite 3/4, maybe 2/3, something like that. I usually try to line it up in the center, and then just cut it right down. So I'm going to cut until I touch that lip. More in here. It's probably good enough. I'm ready to pop that baby out of there, so I usually just pry it apart a little bit. Probably grab on the lip a little bit, but not a lot, because it's only super glued in there. So I'm going to try to get my hands a hold of the bait there. Okay. Master's out of the mold. The mold is just about ready to go. Just a couple things. So the back here, you'll see that the silicone will kind of seep its way back around the bottom side of the lure. But if you can see up close, you can kind of see that it's real light there in the center. And basically I'm just going to cut that out. I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife now and cut that out, because there's no way I could pour into that tiny little hole. So I'm going to cut that out a little bit. Like maybe that might be a dull X-Acto knife. Let's try this one. That's better. So apparently you need a sharp blade for this. So I took the X-Acto knife there and I just cut that out. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can see I got a couple little jagged edges. No big deal. This is the back side of the lure, and this is going to kind of get a little bit ugly when I pull it out of the mold, but we'll just sand it down to clean it up. The real important part of the lure for everything, you know, working out and being aerodynamic and smooth, or sorry, hydrodynamic and smooth, is the front part of the lure, and that's all down here, and that's going to be perfect because we got that at the bottom of our mold. Okay, so if you use a water-based finish like I did, I used a water-based seal coat on this. I'm going to rinse this mold out, because sometimes that water-based material, and you might want to do this with any material, is rinse the mold out after you get done, because some of the residue here might stay in the mold, and that can sometimes cause things to stick in the mold. So I'm basically just going to go and take some water and just rinse this out real good, and once I get it dry, well, rinsed out good, then I'll make sure I dry it out with some paper towel, get it good and dry, and then after I do that, I'll be ready to pour a lure.